At my brother's engagement party, in front of 60 guests, my own brother grabbed the arms of my wheelchair and dumped me onto the floor. I'm Heather. I was 33 years old, and I landed on my hip and my shoulder while the band stopped playing, and a woman screamed somewhere near the cake table. My father stood over me and called me the family's biggest failure. My mother turned her face toward the dark windows so she wouldn't have to watch. For 2 years they had told me the same thing, that I was confused, that I was performing, that there was no truck on County Road 12 the night I lost the use of my legs. They told me to let it go, for the family. But here is what none of them knew. As I lay on that polished wood floor, perfectly calm, hands folding back into my lap, in 15 minutes, 5 officers were going to walk through those doors. And I was the one who had called them. Let me rewind, because to understand that floor you have to understand the 2 years before it. I live alone in a 1-story apartment, 25 minutes from the house I grew up in. Everything in it sits where I can reach it. I drive my own car, a sedan fitted with hand controls, and I work from my kitchen table doing legal, research and probate paperwork for 2 small firms. I'm a paralegal. Remember that word. It matters later. People hear wheelchair and they reach for a softer voice. My family never did. They reached for the phone, and when they called, it was to remind me not to make a thing of the past. Let's not drag it all back up, my mother would say. Like the past was a body we'd buried together and agreed never to dig up. My father was Merrill Halling, and Merrill Halling was my father. He built it from 1 truck and a second mortgage when I was a baby, 11 rigs and a yard off the interstate by the time I was grown. He used to say the company was the real family and the rest of us were shareholders. My brother Nolan was the heir. That was settled the way weather is settled, without a vote. And right around the time of my accident, the company was chasing the biggest contract in its history, a regional distribution deal that would have doubled the fleet. My father wanted that contract the way other men want to be remembered. So when his daughter kept bringing up a truck that supposedly didn't exist, he didn't hear a wound. He heard a liability. They called it a single-car accident. The report called it a single-car accident. The whole town called it that sad business with the Merrill girl who lost control on County Road 12. I spent 9 days in a coma, and by the time I could form a sentence, the story of my own crash had already been written, signed, and filed without me. But I had no idea how bad it was about to get. The engagement came in the spring. Nolan proposed to Bree, a kind, slightly anxious schoolteacher, and suddenly there were menus and seating charts and a rented lodge out at Carlton Lake. My mother had a project that wasn't pretending I was fine. Nobody asked if the lodge had a ramp. When I brought it up, my mother waved a hand. "We'll figure something out, honey. Don't make it complicated." Then, folding napkins, not even looking at me, she said the thing she'd been holding for 2 years. "We just want one happy thing. After everything you put this family through." I had gone through a windshield, and somehow I was the one who'd put them through something. I didn't argue. Arguing was a door I'd stopped walking through. I went home, sat at my kitchen table, and opened a letter that had come that week from my insurance company. It was a denial. They'd refused to cover a better chair I needed. And buried in that denial was the first crack of daylight I'd seen in 2 years. To appeal, the letter explained, I had the right to request my complete file. All of it. Medical records, billing, and any incident documentation connected to the claim. I read that paragraph 4 times. For 2 years I'd been told the past was closed, off limits, none of my business. And here was a faceless insurer reminding me that the records of my own body belonged to me. As a paralegal, I knew exactly how to ask and exactly who had to answer. The next morning I started filing requests. The hospital records, the billing detail, and then, because something in me had never stopped seeing those headlights, the responding, agency's full incident file. Not the one-page summary my father's Thursday night card partner had handed around. Everything, every attachment. I worded it the way I'd word it for a client. Calm, specific, impossible to brush off. Small towns leak. It took 3 weeks for my father to find out. He didn't shout. My father almost never shouts. He set down his fork at Sunday dinner and asked what I thought I was doing. Appealing an insurance denial, I said. That's all. That's not all, he said. You're digging. My mother's voice climbed. Why would you want to relive it? Why would you do that to us? And then my father leaned back, folded his hands, and said it quietly, like wisdom. Let it go. For the family. I looked at the people who had signed papers about my body while I was unconscious, and I understood something clean and cold. They weren't asking me to heal. They were asking me to stay quiet. Those are not the same request. Okay, I said gently, so they'd believe me. That night I made a decision that would change everything. The full crash report arrived first. I read it the way I read everything, slowly, with a pen. And the longer I read, the colder I got. Not because of what it said, because of what it didn't. There was no section ruling out a second vehicle. None. In a serious injury wreck, you expect the officer to address it. Skid patterns, debris, point of impact, the words no evidence of a second vehicle. This report just skipped it. And the EMS run sheet, the report the ambulance crew fills out at the scene, wasn't attached. My father's friend wrote the crash report. The paramedics wrote the run sheet. 2 different documents. 2 different sets of hands. And only one of them was missing. Then my father came to my apartment. He never came to my apartment. The lack of stairs seemed to offend him. He didn't sit. And that's when the real reason finally came out. Underneath all the talk about healing. Do you have any idea what a thing like this would do to the company? His voice was low and fast. We are this close to the distribution contract. You put a cloud over the family name and that contract walks. 11 drivers. Your cousin Pete's job. The whole yard. So that was the wall I'd been feeling on my neck for 2 years. Not grief. Not shame. A contract. He looked at me like I was a load that wouldn't balance. And he said it one more time. Let it go. For the family. For the company, he meant. He'd just told me himself. I sat alone that night in the dark. 2 years of being called confused. 2 years of, there's no truck, Heth. My own father had come to my door to protect a deal worth more to him than the truth about his daughter's spine. And I realized then, no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. So I went quiet. On purpose. And I started building. Week by week. Quietly. Methodically. Getting an EMS run sheet isn't like ordering a pizza. There are privacy rules, custodians of records, request forms that go to exactly the right office or sit in a tray for a month. My family thought my job made me small and bookish. My job made me patient and precise. Exactly what you need to pull a thread out of a bureaucracy. While I waited, I asked around carefully. That's how I found Marion Voss, an EMT for 19 years, retired now, who'd worked the night I went off the road. I took her to coffee. I didn't lead her. I just asked what she remembered. She stirred her coffee a long time. The damage didn't sit right for a car that drifted off alone, she said. Something about the driver's side. I wrote it up. It'd be in the run sheet. There it was again. The run sheet nobody had attached to my file. Marion gave me one more name. An old man who'd stopped that night and stood by the ditch the whole time, telling the officer he'd seen a truck. Walt Whitfield. 81 now, sharp as a tack. I went to see him on a Tuesday. He made me weak coffee and told me the whole thing without my asking twice. A dark pickup, stopped half on the shoulder, lights off, pulling away as he came over the rise. I got most of the plate, he said. Gave it to the young officer right there. Never heard another word. I sat in his kitchen and felt 2 years of being called confused fall off me like water off a roof. A man I'd never met had stood in a ditch and seen exactly what I saw. Young lady, Walt said, when I asked if he'd say it on the record. I've been waiting 2 years for somebody to ask. Then the EMS run sheet arrived in a thin envelope that weighed almost nothing. Under the scene narrative, the crew had written what they saw before anyone tidied the story. Paint transfer along the driver's side door, a color inconsistent with a single vehicle rollover. And at the bottom, in handwriting, certified, 2 years old. Recommend investigation of possible second vehicle. I said it out loud, just once, to my empty kitchen. I'm not faking. There was a truck. They had no idea what was coming. I hired a lawyer, Daniel Coleman, and we found the rest. A body shop invoice from Ostrander Auto Body, dated 3 days after my accident. Front left panel, fender, full repaint, on a dark pickup. Owner of record, Nolan Merrill. Paid in cash, in full, the same day, by Raymond Merrill. My father. They'd sanded the proof off Nolan's truck, but it never occurred to them to worry about my car. Totaled, towed. sitting untouched at a salvage yard for 2 years with the foreign paint still ground into the driver's door, exactly where the paramedics logged it. A detective named Puit reopened the case. She asked me to do the hardest thing yet. Nothing. Say nothing. Don't tip them. Let them believe the drumbeat had worked. So I smiled at Sunday dinners while underneath the table, a county examiner matched the paint to Nolan's truck, and Walt gave a formal statement, and Coleman prepared a civil complaint. Then the engagement party invitation came on heavy cream paper. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a stage, 60 guests, the whole town there to see the Merrills were whole and happy and had nothing to hide. I wrote back yes, because everything I'd built over 2 years was about to come due, party or no party. And after 2 years of being made invisible at the end of the table, I wanted to be in the room when the truth arrived. The lodge was beautiful. Lights in the rafters, the lake black and silver through the windows, the bright ringing of champagne glasses. For a while I was furniture again, the daughter in the chair by the window. Then came the toasts. Nolan raised his glass toward me. And my sister Heather, who's had it harder than she lets on. It might have ended there, but one of Bree's aunts leaned in, kind and well-meaning, and asked what had happened to me. It was a car accident, I said plainly. Someone hit me and drove off. Nolan was close enough to hear. He'd been drinking since before the guests arrived, and the word hit landed on him like a match on dry grass. He threw his arm wide and announced it to the whole room. She's faking it for sympathy. She put herself in that chair and she's been blaming this family ever since. The band stopped. 60 faces swung between us, and my father crossed the room fast, turned his back to the guests, and said in a voice pitched just loud enough to carry, "Sit there and be quiet. You have always been this family's biggest failure." I looked up at him and past his shoulder, at my mother, turned toward the dark windows, refusing to see me. I'm only human. After 2 years, I allowed myself one sentence. There was another car, Nolan, I said, calm as still water. And I know what color it was painted. His face went white with the specific panic of a man who hears a door he thought was locked swing open. He came at me fast, grabbed the arms of my chair and yanked. And then the room went completely silent, except for one of Bree's uncles near the door, speaking fast into his phone. Carlton Lake Lodge. A man just assaulted a woman in a wheelchair. Please hurry. They expected me to fall apart on that floor. Instead, I pushed myself up, righted my own chair with a young waiter's help, folded my hands in my lap, and waited. And that calm did something to the room. They'd wanted a hysterical woman to explain away. What they had was a composed one, sitting upright in the wreck of their party. My father looked at me, really looked. What did you do? It wasn't a question. It was a man feeling the floor move. Outside, tires on gravel. 5 officers came through the double doors. My father stepped forward with his easy authority. It's a family misunderstanding. Officers. I reached into the bag on my chair and held up a business card. My name is Heather Merrill. That man is my brother. He pulled me out of my chair just now, and there are 60 witnesses. This is my attorney. 2 years ago, my brother struck my car with his truck and drove away, and my family paid to have it repainted. There's an open investigation. The case number is on the back. The officer read the card. Then he spoke into his radio, and I caught Detective Puit's name, and a string of numbers, and when he turned back, his whole manner had changed, because dispatch had confirmed there was a file, a real one, active, with my brother's name already in it, and from the door, Walt Whitfield's careful voice. I stood in that ditch 2 years ago, and saw a dark pickup pull away from her car. Nobody ever called me back. You all kept telling me to let it go for the family. So I did. I let go of the family. They walked Nolan out to the lot and detained him that night for the assault. The older thing, the hit and run, the buried run sheet, the repainted truck, took longer, the way real things do. Months later, a grand jury indicted him, and his lawyers steered him toward a plea. My father and Dale Ostrander faced their own reckoning for what it means to bury a Dow serious injury wreck. The distribution contract walked, exactly as my father feared, though not for the reason he feared it. Coleman's civil suit settled for an amount I won't repeat, except to say I'll never have to ask anyone in my family for anything again. My mother came to me at the very end, knelt beside my chair the way she should have 2 years earlier, and whispered, "I knew. God forgive me, I knew." I didn't forgive her, but I touched her shoulder once, because even endings deserve a little mercy. People ask me if justice felt good. The honest answer is that it didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like a door finally closing on a room I'd been trapped in, quiet and final, with me on the right side of it. I stopped asking to be believed. I started keeping the record, and the record set me free,